The machinery of water acquisition overworked the Owens River, the Colorado, and the Mono Basin. In 1964, the Metropolitan Water District proposed diverting the Columbia River to Southern California. The future had arrived.
Somebody finally decided, rather than just go after another source of water every 10 or 20 years, why don't we go to where there's so much water, we'll have enough for 200 years. And where was that place? Alaska. It would have brought this water down in huge jolts, irrigated Nevada, irrigated eastern Oregon on the way. Some of it would have gone all the way to Mexico. It was going to go to Arizona. It was going to go to Texas. Nobody really blinked. There were lots of people in the business who thought, well, yeah, it's maybe a little premature, but this is going to happen someday because it has to.
This is not a mirage, but rather a preview of an atomic marvel of tomorrow, a milestone in man's development. A nuclear-powered agro-industrial complex with a nuclear reactor as the energy source and a desalting plant as the fresh water source. The desert may be transformed into a nuclear-powered agro-industrial complex.
There were plans to lasso, icebergs and tow them down. It was like the flim-flam, man. I mean, there was no end to these people who had plans to dam San Francisco Bay, to pipelines beyond your wildest dreams. When this wasn't about carrying oil, this was about carrying water. This is water.
When these reactors are coupled to a desalting plant, approximately 1 billion gallons of fresh water will be produced per day.
Of course, at the time, nobody was challenging the idea of using 8 gallons of water per flush in a toilet, or irrigating your lawn to the point where it's standing an inch deep in water. Nobody thought about conservation. People only thought about supply.
The city had long since exhausted supply from the tiny Los Angeles River and cemented over its channel by 1960. The DWP built a reservoir to store a supply of Owens River water near the center of Los Angeles.
The Los Angeles City Police helicopter is here. The Los Angeles City Fire Department helicopter is here. The police are on the ground with motorcycles and automobiles trying to effectively activate people from here so there can't possibly be any more loss of life than there is. Property, no telling how much property has already been lost.
A triangle-shaped wedge tears out of the asphalt and concrete-lined wall of the earth-filled dam of the Baldwin Hills Reservoir, and millions of gallons of water race down the canyon toward the homes below, in the community between downtown Los Angeles and International Airport. Almost 300 million gallons of water in 77 minutes, an incredible disaster.
The Department of Water and Power had no choice but to carry on, since it now served 3 million people. In 1966, LA acquired its third river. Like a giant version of Mulholland's Owens Valley project, the California State Aqueduct now brought the Feather River from 600 miles north, enough water to fill the Rose Bowl every 90 minutes.
Los Angeles, by the 70s, was reaching 200 miles in one direction, 250 miles in another direction, and 600 miles in a third direction for water. And it still wasn't enough.
In 1970, the Department of Water and Power, using Mulholland's original sketches, finished the second barrel, a parallel aqueduct not far from the original, sucking now twice as much water from Mono Lake. The million-year-old lake now fell 2 feet every year. It was the only stop for 1 million migrating seabirds on their way from the Arctic to Bolivia.
We could see the lake going down and down and down, and pretty soon there wasn't anything growing around the lake anymore. Everything was drying up. All the little springs were dying. That was really devastating, because we thought the whole lake is going to be like this. And When you think of God's given lake, you think it should be like it was.
The local people had already resigned themselves to the fact that the lake was going to dry up or get to a very small level, just because of the adversary Department of Water and Power is too big to fight. It was not anything that anybody could do.
Great alkali dust storms began boiling up off the exposed shores of Mono and the dry bed of Owens Lake. By 1974, Owens Valley, the Switzerland of America, had the worst particulate pollution in the country.
The sense that somehow LA had sinned against another people became a central imagery in this whole water story, and one that I've always had a lot of trouble with, because I've always sympathized with the underdog, but at the same time I've been proud of my grandfather, so it's given me a great deal of conflict to have to come to terms with that.
Why are you doing it? How much better can you eat? What can you buy that you can't already afford?
The future, Mr. Gitz. The future.
And the crimes that are committed in the name of the future, against the future, is really the history of water in California, here in LA. I mean, it's just the supreme irony.
See, Mr. Gitz, most people never have to face the fact. At the right time and the right place, they're capable of anything.
Some crimes are so monstrous that they can't figure out how to punish them, so they actually sort of reward them. And Mulholland's name is on the scenic route of the city, and the criminals' names are on plaques as city founders, rather than in jail where they belonged.
I think a movie like Chinatown is an easy out. It oversimplifies, it's melodramatic, it's not true. I mean, not literally not true, but it provides a rather easy explanation of events. And for people who like to bash LA, it's perfect. New York Times loves to hold it up as a piece of history.
The movie Chinatown was bad, contorted history, but it was powerful myth, rekindling violence against the Department of Water and Power, now headquartered in a building that cost as much as Mulholland's original aqueduct.
There was violence here before, a long time ago. Back in 1924, angry farmers and ranchers lined the wall, armed with shotguns and rifles. They blew holes in the aqueduct 17 times. This year, it took this form, a dynamite blast at the gates of the first aqueduct. The water for Los Angeles stopped briefly. Instead,
resistance was futile. The Department of Water and Power by now had more manpower than the population of Bishop, more, in fact, than the entire population of Owens Valley. But this time, something had changed.